Two teenagers from Indonesia just walked into the most brutal junior racing championship in Europe, and the data says they might belong there. Picture this. You're 17 years old. You've never raced in Europe before. You don't know these tracks. You don't know these riders. And you certainly don't know what -10 degrees of cold European asphalt feels like under your tyres when you're pushing at the absolute limit. But there you are. Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. 4.6 kilometres of fast corners, brutal braking zones, and some of the hungriest junior riders on the planet. Today, two Indonesians showed up to that party. Kiandra Ramadipa, number 32, Moto3 junior class, and Zeven Rozul Moto4. Their European campaigns have officially begun. And the data from Friday's free practice sessions. Let's just say the rivals should be paying attention. Stay with me through this entire breakdown, because by the end of this video, I'm going to show you one specific data point from Kiandra's sector analysis that made even veteran timing engineers take a second look. Don't skip ahead, you'll miss it. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, your home for deep dive Indonesian motorsport analysis. If you're new here, this is where we don't just tell you who finished first. We break down why, sector times, telemetry patterns, tyre degradation, race pace versus qualifying pace. We go all the way in. And today is a special one. This past Friday at Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, home of the Spanish Grand Prix, one of the most iconic tracks in all of motorsport, two young Indonesians stepped onto the European stage for the very first time in the FIM JuniorGP Championship, also known as the FAM Moto3 Junior Championship. We're talking about Kiandra Ramadipa in the Moto3 junior class and Zeven Rozul in the Moto4 category. We have full free practice 1 and free practice 2 data in front of us right now. Timing sheets, sector breakdowns, pace analysis, long-run simulations. And we are going to go through all of it. Grab your coffee or your tea or whatever fuel keeps you going. Because this is going to be a proper breakdown. Let's get into it. Before we look at any lap times, let's understand the conditions, because lap times mean absolutely nothing if you don't know what the track was doing at the time. Friday at Barcelona-Catalunya gave us ideal racing conditions. The timing sheets confirm a DRI track status across both free practice 1 and free practice 2. No rain, no damp patches, no safety car interruptions. The asphalt temperature was warm, and this is actually crucial. Warm tarmac means better mechanical grip from the outset, which means riders can start pushing for their limits much earlier in the session rather than spending the first 15 minutes just warming the tyres up. For debuting riders like Kiandra and Ziven, this is actually a double-edged sword. Yes, you get good grip, but it also means the faster, more experienced European riders get up to pace very quickly, which compresses the time window you have to find your rhythm before the session leaderboard becomes meaningful. So with that context established, let's talk numbers. Free practice 1 in the Moto3 junior class was immediately competitive. These junior riders don't ease into it, they come out attacking. The session was topped by Leonardo Zanni from Momoven Racing, who posted a best lap of 1 minute, 47.891 seconds. That's a fast lap, very fast, especially for a junior category machine. In second place was Travis Bogg, just 0.299 seconds behind Zanni. Third place went to Fernando Bajosa, who would go on to play a much bigger role in FP2, and we'll get to that. Now let's talk about Kiandra Ramadipa. Number 32. He's racing in his first ever European Championship weekend. First time on European soil in a competitive race context. And here's something I want you to understand about FP1 for a debutant. FP1 is not about lap times. It's about learning. Every track has a personality. Barcelona-Catalunya, at 4.657 kilometres long, has a very specific personality. It demands precise braking points, it rewards commitment through its long, sweeping corners, and it punishes any hesitation at the exit of slower technical sections. Kiandra's job in FP1 was to learn that personality, to calibrate his engine braking settings, to understand where the grip changes across different parts of the circuit, to find the racing lines that will unlock lap time later, not to post a headline number. And from what we can see in the data, that's exactly what he did. Methodical, structured, no unnecessary risks. Exactly the approach his engineering team would have planned. But here's where it gets interesting. And this is something most people covering this event completely missed. Stick with me because the FP2 data tells a completely different story about where Kiandra actually is. And it's a good one. Over in the Moto4 category, Zeven Rozul was also navigating his own debut challenge. And honestly, the Moto4 class is a different kind of brutal. FP1 was topped by Ignacio Galán with a best time of 1 minute, 51.391 seconds. Christian Borelli slotted into second place, just 0.235 seconds back. And in third, and this is interesting to note, Kabila Irfan of Malaysia posted a 0.284 second gap to the leader to take P3. A strong showing for Southeast Asian representation on the European stage. Now here's what makes the Moto4 class so fascinating from a data perspective. The top 10 riders were separated by less than 0.9 seconds. Think about that. Less than 9/10 of a second across 10 riders. That is an extraordinarily compressed field. What that tells you is that there are no easy positions in this class. Every single lap, every single sector, every single corner. Exit matters. You cannot afford to lose a 10th here and a 10th there. Because that 10th is the difference between P3 and P10 for Zeven Rozul, who is transitioning from Asian circuit racing to the very different character of European circuits. The 40 minutes of FP1 were about understanding tyre behaviour, chassis feel, and braking markers on a track he's never raced before. The European circuit style demands very high corner speed. Asian circuits tend to have more stop-and-go characteristics. You brake hard, turn in, and power out. Circuits like Barcelona reward a more flowing style where you carry speed through the apex and manage your exit with precision throttle control. It's a different mental model entirely. Zeven was building that new mental model in real time on Friday, and that process takes time. There's no shortcut for it. Alright, this is where we get into the real meat of Friday's data. Free practice 2. If FP1 is a getting to know you session, FP2 is the truth test. Sessions are longer, track conditions are more evolved, rubber is down from the morning session, and riders have had time to debrief with their engineers and make setup changes. FP2 is also the session that most closely simulates race conditions. Tyre wear patterns in FP2 are your best preview of what Sunday's race pace will look like. And that's exactly what we're going to analyse. In the Moto3 junior class, Fernando Bujosa stepped up from P3 in FP1 to claim the top of the FP2 timesheet with a best lap of 1 minute, 48.350 seconds. That's a 1/10 of a second slower than FP1's fastest time. Which makes sense because FP2 is typically more about race simulation than outright single lap attack. Christian Daniel Jr. was right behind him in second, 0.302 seconds back. Marios Nicolas completed the top 3 with a 0.406 second gap. But here's what I want you to pay attention to, and this is where the data becomes genuinely interesting. When you look at the chronological lap-by-lap timing, not just the best lap, but every single lap each rider did throughout the session, you start to see who is really ready for race day and who was just on a hot lap chase. Bujosa was running consistent mid-1:48 seconds on used tyres. Not just one fast lap. Consistent, repeatable 1:48 seconds. That is race-winning pace. That is the benchmark. Now, let's talk about Kiandra Ramadipa. And this is the part I teased at the beginning of the video. So if you're still here, good. You're about to see why this matters. Looking at Kiandra's sector data from FP2 versus FP1, there is a very significant improvement in Sector 2. Sector 2 at Barcelona-Catalunya is one of the most demanding sections of the entire circuit. It combines hard braking zones with long, commitment-requiring corner complexes. Getting Sector 2 right requires trust in your front end, precise trail braking technique, and the confidence to carry speed into the apex without washing the front tyre. The fact that Kiandra showed meaningful improvement in that sector from FP1 to FP2 tells you something important. His adaptation process is working exactly as it should. Now let's look at the combined best sector times. What's sometimes called the theoretical best lap, or the PES, the sum of each rider's best individual sector across the whole session. And this is where it gets really interesting. When you add up Kiandra's best sectors from Sector 1 all the way through Sector 4, his theoretical best lap puts him inside the top 3 of the entire field. Top 3 on his debut weekend. Keep that in mind. That number is significant. It tells you that Kiandra has the raw pace already. He has found the time somewhere on this circuit. The challenge, and this is the homework for his engineering crew going into Saturday, is linking all of those sectors together in one single lap. The specific technical focus heading into Saturday's qualifying is the front-end stability entering Turn 10. Barcelona's Turn 10 is a medium-speed right-hander that rewards a very smooth entry. Any instability at the front during turn-in will disrupt your trajectory through the corner and cost you time in Sector 3 as a consequence. If Kiandra's crew can dial in that front-end stability overnight through suspension setup, geometry tweaks or rider technique coaching, then the raw pace we're seeing in the sector data can translate into a complete, clean, hot lap. And when that happens, the target of a top 8 start grid position becomes very realistic. The reference pace for point-scoring positions in the Moto3 junior race is approximately 1:49 flat. Kiandra needs to be consistently in the low 1:49s to be in contention, and everything we see in the sector data suggests that number is well within his reach if the setup work comes together overnight. Let's also briefly address the long-run data, because this will matter enormously on Sunday. In the Moto3 junior class, tyre degradation tends to kick in quite aggressively after around lap 8 of a race. If a rider's pace drops by more than 0.5 seconds from their peak by that point, they're fighting a losing battle. The data we want to see from Kiandra's longer runs in FP2 is that his lap times hold in the 1:49 range past lap 8. If he can do that, if the pace is consistent and the front end doesn't start moving around as the tyre wears, then he's not just a threat in qualifying, he's a genuine race day factor. This is the conversation his engineers will be having through the night. Tyre pressure settings, suspension stiffness, front preload. All of these interact with how the tyre performs over a full race distance. We'll see the results of that work when qualifying begins on Saturday. Let's switch over to the Moto4 class now and look at what Zeven Rozul's Friday data tells us. FP2 in Moto4 was dominated by Izan Rodriguez, who posted the fastest time of the session at 1 minute 51.992 seconds. Rodriguez's lap pushed the limits of what the Moto4 machinery can do around this circuit, and it serves as the benchmark that everyone in the field is chasing. Now for Ziven, the story of FP2 is about accumulating track time and building the foundational understanding that will serve him throughout the rest of the weekend. Here's what I mean. When you race in Asia, on tracks that are typically more technical, and stop and go, you develop a very particular set of muscle memories. Braking points, throttle timing, body positioning. It's all calibrated to that style of circuit. Then you arrive at Barcelona, which is a flowing, high corner speed circuit. And your muscle memories, they fight you. Your instinct says brake here, but the track says no. Carry more speed, trust the grip, commit to the corner. That internal battle between ingrained muscle memory and new information is what every driver transitioning from one circuit culture to another has to navigate. And you don't resolve that battle overnight. You resolve it through laps, repetition, data review, engineer feedback, and more laps. Zeven's assignment for FP2 was to aggressively close the gap between his braking points and the optimal braking markers. The data suggests there's still time to be found in his braking zones. He's leaving distance on the table at several corners by braking slightly too early. Closing that gap doesn't require bravery, it requires precision. Micro adjustments, centimetre by centimetre. Informed by the data, his electronics are recording every single lap. The other area of focus is corner exit RPM management. In the Moto4 class, losing revs at the exit of a corner means a sluggish acceleration phase out onto the straight. And in a class where gaps are measured in tenths, that loss compounds very quickly across a full lap. The good news, these are both fixable problems, very fixable, and they're both the kinds of things that improve rapidly with track time. Here's what I want you to think about as we move into the final segment. Zeven's pace gap to the leader right now is almost entirely made up of things that are fixable before the race on Sunday. If his engineers get the braking zones and the corner exit dialed in, What does his race pace look like? We're going to talk about exactly that, coming up right now. Before we talk specific targets and expectations, I want to give you some context about what a debut weekend in European junior motorsport actually means. Because social media tends to reduce everything to fastest lap and final position, and that framing misses almost everything that actually matters. The FIM JuniorGP Championship, or FAM Moto3 Junior Championship as it's now officially known, is not a development series for beginners. The riders in this paddock are hungry, experienced, and many of them have been racing European circuits since they were 12 or 13 years old. They know every curb at Barcelona. They know where the tarmac changes colour and what that means for grip. They know which corners have a bump at the apex that will unseat the front end if you're not ready for it. They have years of institutional knowledge about this circuit baked into their instincts. Kiandra and Zeven are building that knowledge in real time, this weekend, in front of their competitors. And yet, and this is what I find genuinely impressive, neither of them's being reckless about it. There's no desperate throwing the bike at corners hoping for a miracle lap. There's a methodical, structured approach to building pace, which, honestly, is exactly what good racing looks like. For Kiandra, the progression from FP1 to FP2 was clear and measurable. The sector times improved, the pace consistency improved. The theoretical best lap, when you combine his best individual sectors, is top 3 material. His challenge heading into Saturday's qualifying is not pace. He has the pace. His challenge is packaging that pace into one single perfect lap, what we call a hot lap or time attack lap, where all 4 sectors come together cleanly, without any mistakes, without any traffic, on a tyre that is in its optimal working window. That's a mental and technical challenge as much as it is a physical one. The pressure of qualifying, when every tenth of a second determines where you start the race, is a very different experience from the more relaxed rhythm of practice sessions. The target for Q1 and Q2 is clear. Aim for a top 5 qualifying position. Given the Barcelona track record, showing how much starting position influences race outcomes, especially given the high-risk, tight-pack nature of the Turn 1 approach, starting well is not just advantageous, it's protective. A front row start, or even a second row start, gives Kiandra the clean air he needs to execute his own race strategy, rather than reacting to chaos in front of him. That clean air could be the difference between a top 5 finish and a top 10 finish. Or worse, getting caught in a Turn 1 incident that ends his race before it begins. The other key piece of advice from the data: use the slipstream on the main straight. At Barcelona, the main straight runs close to 1 kilometre in length. That is enormous for a junior motorcycle. Getting in the toe of the rider in front, allowing their draft to pull you along and reduce your aerodynamic drag, can be worth 2 or 3 tenths of a second on that stretch alone. In qualifying, when you're on a new tyre trying to string together a perfect lap, timing your slipstream opportunity correctly can be the difference between a front row start and row 4. Kiandra's crew will have done the tyre analysis, the setup work, and the strategy planning overnight. Saturday's qualifier is his canvas, and here's something that doesn't come up in most race weekend coverage. I want to tell you about the one specific corner that could define Kiandra's entire qualifying lap. It's not the most famous corner on the circuit, it's turn 10. And here's exactly why. Turn 10 at Barcelona is a right-hand corner that sits between 2 relatively fast sections of the circuit. It's medium speed, it's slightly uphill on the approach, and it's the kind of corner that punishes front-end instability severely. If your front end moves, if the tyre starts to chatter or the forks dive too aggressively under trail braking, you lose confidence. And when you lose confidence at turn 10, you open the throttle earlier than optimal on the exit, and you lose time in sector 3 as a direct consequence. Kiandra's data showed some front-end sensitivity at turn 10 in the first 2 practice sessions. His engineers will have been working on suspension calibration overnight specifically to address this. If they get it right, turn 10 stops being a problem and becomes an opportunity. Because consistent front-end behaviour gives Kiandra the confidence to carry more speed through that corner and maximise his sector 3 time. Small detail, huge consequence. For Zeven in Moto4, the assessment is straightforward. This is a development weekend, and it's going exactly as a development weekend should. Every lap he completes is data. Every lap is muscle memory being overwritten with new, Europe-specific information. Every lap is a conversation between Zeven and the circuit. The Moto4 class is, as I mentioned, an absolute dogfight. The field is compressed and ferocious. Gaining race pace against riders who have been racing on European circuits for years requires exactly the kind of methodical track time accumulation that Ziven is currently doing. The target going into Saturday's qualifying isn't necessarily a specific position. The target is a consistent improvement in lap time compared to where he was in FP1. If Zeven can demonstrate that his lap times are trending downward session by session, if every time he goes out he's faster than the last time, then the trajectory is pointing in the right direction, and Sunday's race will tell us how far along that trajectory he's come. Two specific targets for the engineering team on the Ziven side of the garage. First, get the braking points optimised. Close the gap. Stop leaving those tenths on the table at the end of the braking zones. Second, work on corner exit RPM consistency. Make sure the engine is in the right rev range when the throttle goes open, so the acceleration out of every corner is as strong as possible. Get those two things right, and Zeven's race pace on Sunday becomes a much more competitive conversation. All right, we've broken down the data, we've looked at the sector times, we've talked about what needs to happen on Saturday. But before we wrap up, I want to give you my honest take on where I think each of these riders finishes on Sunday. A prediction, based purely on the data. Don't go anywhere. Saturday's qualifying session is the hinge point of this entire weekend. What happens in Q1 and Q2 will define the starting positions, and at Barcelona-Catalunya, starting position is not just a number, it's a survival mechanism. The circuit's approach to Turn 1 has historically produced some of the most chaotic opening lap incidents in junior racing. A tight pack of riders, all on fresh tyres, all trying to establish position before the first braking zone. It's a high-risk moment, and where you start that moment determines whether you're fighting for positions or simply trying to avoid becoming part of a pile-up. Based on what the data showed us on Friday, the theoretical best lap in the top three, the consistent improvement in Sector 2, the race pace trending toward the mid-1:49 seconds. I believe Kiandra is capable of a top 8 qualifying position on Saturday. If the overnight setup work on front-end stability delivers, and there's every reason to believe it will, a top 5 qualifier is within reach. And if he starts top 5 and manages the first lap cleanly, a race finish inside the points is a very realistic outcome. The key variable is tyre life. If his pace holds past lap 8, and the long-run data suggests it should with the right pressure settings, then he has the pace to compete in the latter stages of the race when the field begins to string out. A debut weekend with a points finish would be an exceptional result, but even a clean, incident-free race with competitive lap times would demonstrate that Kiandra belongs at this level, and based on Friday's data, I believe he does. For Ziven, Sunday's race is about foundations. It's about completing a full race distance, collecting data, building confidence, and finishing ahead of where he starts. The Moto4 field is deep and experienced. Closing a meaningful gap to the front in one weekend is a very large ask for any rider on a debut. But if Ziven's team resolves the braking and corner exit issues overnight, and Saturday's qualifying shows continued lap time improvement, then Sunday could tell a better story than the Friday data alone would suggest. I'd like to see Ziven complete the race cleanly, post consistent lap times throughout, and demonstrate that his pace is trending toward the midfield. That would be a successful debut weekend by any objective measure. Junior motorsport is a marathon, not a sprint. Every lap counts. Every bit of data informs the next session. Zeven's European campaign is in its first hours. What matters is the trajectory. And so far the trajectory is in the right direction. And that is your complete Friday data breakdown from Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, Free Practice 1 and Free Practice 2 analysed in full. To watch Saturday's qualifying sessions live, head to the official FIM Junior Championship website. Search FIM Moto3 Junior Championship, and you'll find the timing sheets and live updates there. And if you want to watch Sunday's full race, the official FIM Junior Championship YouTube channel streams the races live. We'll put the link right in the description below. Easy one-click access. Now here's what I want from you before you close this video. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what's your prediction for Kiandra's qualifying position on Saturday? Top 5? Top 10? Something else? Let me know. I read every comment and I'll personally respond to the best predictions after qualifying. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button. Because the race review, the qualifying analysis, and all the Sunday race coverage is coming, and you don't want to miss any of it. Like this video if the data breakdown helped you understand what's actually happening on track. Share it with a fellow motorsport fan who deserves better analysis than just a final results table. I'll see you in the race review. Go fast, stay safe, and as always, keep chasing the data.